Welcome to Crown TV. Immerse yourself with a captivating audio from our stories. We provide an alternative way to read books in audio. We upload many audiobooks as possible, from bestsellers to timeless classic. Subscribe and stay tuned for new upload.
86. He's a lovesick puppy. Everyone stared at Kathy in shock. Had Kathy and Alex previously been together? Babe, is this the ex-boyfriend you told me about? Simon asked, walking over to Kathy. Yes, that's him, she said, sneering at Alex. Ha ha. Simon laughed arrogantly and swaggered over to Kelly. Kelly, you have no idea what kind of boyfriend you'll be getting with him. He would take you out for fast food, and if you got a room, then it would be the cheapest one available. Would you really feel special with a boyfriend like that? He smiled proudly. As he saw Kelly frown, he got even happier. That's right, Kathy said, walking over to stand beside Kelly and Alex. She looked at Alex with a cold smile. This loser followed me around like a dog. He'd run up to me right after class, chat with me and tell me jokes. One time I was sick, and even though I didn't even know him, he just came over with a month's worth of food. But then he got tired and didn't do anything for 6 months. Even though Kelly was polite, she couldn't help but get angry. Get out of my way, she said. Hey, cousin, you've got quite the temper, Simon said, smirking. We're just telling the truth. If you don't believe us, ask him. She knew that Alex was poor, and Kathy's words might have some basis in truth, but she must have made up most of it. Kelly trusted Alex, and the man who had dared to drive into a group of people that night was definitely nothing like the one Kathy had just described. You don't believe me, do you? Kathy asked, taking out her cell phone. I saved the messages he sent when we were together. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm not pining after him. I just want a reminder of why I definitely don't want him. She opened the chat history with Alex. Let me show you what he said to me back then. She began to read the messages out loud. Kathy, how did you sleep? The street outside the school has been closed for a while, so I took the bus to get some food. I just came back, but I can get someone to bring you food if you need it. She continued reading. I'm still short of money for the makeup you want, but don't worry. I'll definitely buy it for you. I'm still washing dishes at the restaurant, and I've also found a part-time delivery job. She smirked as she read the next message. Kathy, since you said that you were tired of eating in the canteen, then I'll take you to this snack bar instead. It's quite nice there, and it's been busy for the past 3 days. They have a 20% discount. Everyone was crowded around Kathy, looking at her phone and laughing as she read each message. As she spoke, her eyes locked on Alex's face. Seeing how serious he looked, she became even prouder of herself. Alex was hurt. He didn't regret a single word of what he had written. He had sent those messages because they'd been in a relationship and he had loved her. Everything he had written had come straight from his heart, even though it looked ridiculous now. He was also angry because those messages were a reminder of the feelings they had once shared, and he didn't understand why she would use them to publicly humiliate him. Kathy smiled, and her words stabbed at his heart like knives. Hey, let us look, one of the men said, taking the phone and beginning to read the chat messages. Kathy, he read, is your mind too busy to sleep? Are you thinking about me like I'm thinking about you? Kathy, he said, moving on to the next message, I just realized that you look like one of my favorite actresses. I'm so lucky to have you as my girlfriend. Every man on the planet is probably jealous of me. I've only been eating 1 meal a day so I can save the money to buy a phone for you. Don't worry about me. If a new phone will make you happy, then it's worth not eating much. Damn, someone said. He just lays it all out there, doesn't he? It's disgusting, someone else answered. Ugh, he's making me sick, came another voice. The young men passed around Kathy's phone. As they read, they laughed so hard that they had to hold their stomachs and tears ran down their faces. The phone was finally returned to Kathy. Kelly, she said, now do you see what kind of person this guy used to be? Kelly's gaze flickered slightly, but she still trusted Alex. Even with everything she had heard, she still thought he was a man worth pursuing. Babe, you've shown us how much of a lapdog he is, Simon said, smiling and wrapping an arm around Kathy's waist. Now tell everyone how you treated him. I don't want you to be associated with this disgusting piece of trash. Everyone looked at Kathy with interest. When Alex had worshipped her, had she allowed any intimacy? Babe, don't worry, she said sweetly. Do you really think I would let him lay a hand on me? She turned to Alex with a trace of viciousness in her eyes as she said, I was with him for a year, but apart from letting him hold my hand, I've never done anything with him. Even when we shared a room, I slept on his bed and he slept on the floor. If he had tried anything, I would have broken up with him. Holy shit, one man said. An entire year and you didn't share a bed? My girlfriend and I were in bed together after only a month. Look at these messages, another man said. I thought they might work for him, but then he only got to the stage of holding hands. This guy is a loser. Everyone looked at Alex as they mocked him. I never expected that, Simon said, hugging Kathy. I thought he was an expert in picking up girls, but it turns out he's just a coward. He smiled at Alex. You were with her for a whole year and you didn't manage to sleep with her? Did you even try? I was sleeping with her after a couple of weeks. As he spoke, Simon lowered his head to look at Kathy. He hugged her waist and said, Come on, babe. He kissed her, and one of his hands slid down to cup her buttocks. When they were finished, Kathy discreetly wiped the saliva from her mouth and shyly glanced at him. Babe, your skill at kissing isn't too bad, but it's a pity you wasted a year kissing a loser. I still can't understand it, Simon said. He looked at Kelly again and snorted contemptuously. Hey, Kelly, I'll admit that you're smarter than me, but you have a terrible taste in men. Are you really going to waste yourself on someone who has no money and no backbone? Kelly was very angry. She didn't believe that Alex was the kind of man Kathy and the others had described. She slowly turned to him and asked softly, Is what they said true? Even with the chat history, she didn't believe it. Alex must have had a good reason for his behavior, and if he denied everything, she would stand by him. Alex said nothing. He just glanced at Kelly, and her heart began to hurt. He was admitting it. But you have a reason for it all, don't you? She asked, longing to hear him defend himself. No, Alex said, lowering his eyes. He refused to deny loving Kathy in the past. He also didn't want Kelly to fall any deeper in love with him. From the way she looked at him, he suspected that she was already too attached. Kelly bit her lip as she looked resentfully at Alex. His behavior was making it hard for her to tell what kind of person he was. And I was the one who left him, Kathy said proudly, looking at Alex. He looked so miserable, and even after I dumped him, he still followed me around like a puppy and begged me to take him back, but I just ignored him. Seeing the situation developing as he had expected, and seeing Alex's lovely look, Kathy was extremely happy. She needed to work even harder and make sure that Kelly grew angry with Alex. That way she would dump him and he would lose her money. And without the money, he wouldn't be able to maintain his relationship with Debbie. To get me back, he tried to show off to me at school, Kathy said sharply, pointing at Alex. He invited me to eat at Chez Laurent and donated money to charity to get back in my good books. He also bought me a lot of clothes, and then he tried to get me drunk and take me to a hotel. He was absolutely shameless, and I'm lucky he didn't get away with it. Animal, the man shouted. That bastard should be in jail, someone called. You shouldn't get away with it, someone else joined in. The others all scolded Alex for being shameless. Alex's heart grew cold. To get revenge on him, Kathy was telling lies. She had been the one who had wanted to drag him into the bathroom at the Angel Bar. Is that true? Kelly asked with a trembling voice. Tears flowed down her face, striking at Alex's heart. But he couldn't let her get any more attached to him. He just looked at Kelly quietly, not saying a word, but his heart was suffering just like hers. Episode 87, Going to Chicago. Kelly, Simon said, smiling as he walked around her. Look at this good boyfriend you found. He's clearly guilty, and you still want to bring this piece of trash into our house. You're just messing with us, right? And the family thinks so much of you. Do you really have the courage to face our family with a boyfriend like that? Kelly had always been one of the more favored members of her family. When she had grown up, she had been given an important position in the family business, and she was valued and loved. Because of this, some of her cousins resented her, including Simon, who was taking advantage of this opportunity to hurt her. She had been staring bitterly at Alex, afraid of misjudging him. But now she walked up to him and yelled, "She's obviously making fun of you, so speak up. Tell everyone that she's lying and that you didn't do any of that." Alex lowered his gaze and didn't say a word. Kelly was angry and disappointed. This was not the hot-blooded man who had stood against more than 10 people the night they had met. He was a coward. "Say something," she demanded. "Anything." It didn't matter what the truth was. If he said something, or if he simply shook his head, she would believe him. But he did nothing at all. "Speak!" Kelly screamed, feeling like she was about to go crazy. She slapped him, and her nails tore the skin on his face. Everyone was shocked. She glared at Alex with teary eyes as she yelled, "I hate you!" With that, she turned and ran through the crowd. "You, Alex, if anything happens to Kelly, I'll never forgive you," Sharon said, and then she chased after her friend, calling, "Kelly, wait for me." Alex raised his head and looked in the direction Kelly had left. He sighed slightly. "I already have Debbie," he thought. "I'm sorry, Kelly." With Kelly gone, Alex became the crowd's new target, and he slowly pushed his way through them all. "Get lost, nobody wants you here," a young man said, pushing at Alex, who glared at him angrily, making the man shrink back. Kathy had achieved her goal. Looking at Alex's slumped shoulders, her eyes showed a hint of coldness as she whispered, "Alex, I said I would make you pay for humiliating me." Alex had lost a day to Kathy's scheming, but at least one good thing had come out of it. Kelly had completely given up on him. In the afternoon, Alex went to pick up Debbie from band practice. When she saw the scratch on his face, he lied and said that he had accidentally cut himself. They got on a bus and sat in the last row, just like when they had first met. "What's wrong? Why do you look unhappy?" Debbie asked, holding Alex's hand. After a few days of rehearsal with the band, she had gradually recovered from Carla's death. "It's nothing," he said, realizing that he should be focused on Debbie. He looked at her with a faint smile. "Why are you so happy? Ever since we got on the bus, you've been grinning." "I have not," Debbie said, but she was still smiling. She looked at him with bright eyes. "Janice said she's arranging for us to go to Chicago in the next few days to participate in that popular talent show, The Sky's the Limit." "That's great news," Alex said, happy for her. "I'll go with you." "No need," Debbie said. "Janice said we'll be rehearsing while we're in Chicago. She has a lot of plans for us, and it might take several days." She stared into his eyes and said seriously, "You should stay at school and study hard. There's nothing you can do anyway, and I can take care of myself." "Okay," Alex answered, deliberately dragging it out. "But I'm afraid that once you get to Chicago, other men will snatch you away. After all, a big city like Chicago is full of handsome rich men. Well, I'm just a loser from Preston University." Debbie laughed. She glanced at Alex, giving him a fake arrogant look, and said, "And now you realize how important I am? As for whether I'll be stolen away, that'll depend on you. If you treat me well enough, then I won't notice any other men when I'm there." With that, her lips twitched, and she stifled a giggle. Alex smiled at her and began to massage her shoulders, and she smirked as if her evil scheme had succeeded. "Are you comfortable?" he asked. "Just so." "Then, when you get to Chicago, will you close your eyes so you don't see other men?" "I might close one eye," she teased. "Only one?" he asked, grinning as he continued to massage her. "How about this? Will you close both eyes now?" "Maybe 1.5." 3 days later, Debbie, Janice, and the other members of Dream Chasers boarded a flight to Chicago to pursue their dream. Alex, who was back at Preston University, added Chicago to his phone's weather forecast. In the cafeteria, he ordered a plate of spaghetti, took it over to a table, and sat down. Just as he took a bite, he heard a sweet voice ask, "Can I join you?" He looked up and saw Kelly standing in front of him. She was wearing a blue and purple print top and a pair of cobalt blue shorts, making her look really pretty. Kelly put her hands behind her back and looked at Alex with a gentle smile. "Oh," Alex said. A strand of spaghetti fell off his fork and back onto the plate. The last time he had seen Kelly, She'd been disappointed and angry at him. After she had hit him, she'd run away. "You're wondering why I'm here when I was so angry at you before, right?" Kelly asked, sitting across from him. "To be honest, I was furious at the time, and after I got home I cried for ages. After what Kathy said, I felt that you weren't at all like the man who saved me that night." She looked into his eyes. "But when I woke up the next morning, I felt much calmer." Alex merely stared at her. "I believe that Kathy was telling the truth," she said. "But I also think it was mixed with exaggeration and lies. You were so determined to reject me that day, and I don't believe that you would beg her to take you back. Those messages you sent were quite normal when you were in a relationship. As for when she said you tried to get her drunk in the bar and then take her to a room—" "Maybe I did," Alex interrupted in a low voice. "No, I don't believe that," Kelly stated, watching him closely. "That's up to you," he said, glancing at her. "But as he said before, I promised to pretend to be your boyfriend at that party, and now it's over." No matter how she felt about him, he wasn't going to date her for real. "I'll go back on my word," Kelly stated, not beating around the bush. Alex didn't know what to say. He looked down and started to eat his spaghetti. He would never again believe anything Kelly said. No matter what, he would simply pretend he didn't hear her and that she wasn't there. "Alex, are you angry?" she asked, lowering her head to try to make eye contact. Alex concentrated on eating his meal. What did she expect him to say? "Alex, please don't be angry at me," she said, reaching out to touch his shoulder. She didn't expect his reaction. With a wave of his hand, he shook her off. "Ow!" she yelped with pain. "What's wrong?" he asked. When he had shaken off her hand, he seemed to have pinched her thumb. Kelly held the thumb of her left hand and frowned as she looked at him. "Let me see." He put down his fork and grabbed her hand. His heart sped up the moment he touched her, and he quickly focused his attention on her hand. "How is it?" he asked as he gently massaged her thumb. "Much better," she said with a trace of a smile. Noticing the small scar on his cheekbone, she felt guilty. "Does your face still hurt?" He shook his head slightly and glanced up at her. "It's fine," he said, letting go of her hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "I lost my temper." He didn't answer and simply went back to eating his spaghetti. "Can I have some of that?" Kelly asked softly. Alex glanced up and saw her watching him expectantly. "I'll go and get you some," he said. He had already forgotten that he had promised himself he would ignore her. "No need," she said with a smile. She got up, grabbed a fork, and sat across the table from him. "Is this okay?" Whatever," Alex said. As he lowered his head to eat, another fork came into view. Kelly twirled some spaghetti around her fork and put it in her mouth. It was delicious. They continued to share the same plate of pasta, drawing envious looks from many of the male students in the cafeteria. Kelly took some more and placed it in her mouth. This string of spaghetti was very long, and it didn't break when she lifted it. Slowly, she worked her way along with it, looking up in shock as her lips made contact with Alex's mouth. They both opened their eyes wide. Alex's face turned red with embarrassment, and he quickly bit off his end of the spaghetti strand. He jerked his face away from her. "I'm sorry," he said. Seeing Alex get flustered, Kelly couldn't help but laugh sweetly. Alex was stunned. Kelly's laugh was extremely charming, and before he knew it, he had a silly smile on his face. Episode 88, The Big Announcement. Alex and Kelly were still both a little dazed when Alex's phone rang. He took it out and saw that it was a video call from Debbie. He glanced nervously at Kelly and then accepted the call. Debbie's beautiful face appeared on the screen. She had just finished unpacking in Chicago, and she couldn't wait to speak to Alex. "Alex, where are you?" she asked, smiling sweetly. "I'm in the cafeteria," he answered. "Look, I'm having spaghetti." He angled the camera to show his plate. "Oh, why do you have 2 forks?" she asked curiously. "Ah." Panic flashed across Alex's face for a moment, and then he smiled lightly. I accidentally dropped my fork on the floor and had to get another one. When she heard Alex lie, Kelly's bottom lip trembled. Oh, okay. Debbie didn't seem worried. She moved her phone around the room, showing it to Alex. Look, this is the practice room Janice got for us. We'll be rehearsing here before we go to the talent show. Hey, it looks pretty good, Alex said. And then he frowned with concern. If you're staying in Chicago for a few days, are you sure you don't need me there? We'll be here for about a week or so, she said. I told you that I don't need you to come. I'm trying to do what's best for you. Okay, he said. Take good care of yourself in Chicago, and I'll see you when you get back. After talking to Alex for a while, Debbie ended the call. You love your girlfriend a lot, Kelly said with a faint smile. Yes, Alex said. So, do you understand now? After talking to Debbie, he was resolved again. He had to be clearer with Kelly. He was no longer afraid of Kelly getting more attached to him, but he was worried that he might fall in love with her. I understand, Kelly said, but I'm still not giving up. As I said before, perhaps after a while, you'll realize that I'm more compatible with you. She wasn't avoiding reality, but she refused to hide her feelings for him. Alex was speechless. Then he got angry. Kelly was intentionally trying to destroy his relationship with Debbie. Scowling at her, he got up and left the cafeteria. Kelly had a faint smile on her face as she watched him leave. Then her gaze slowly shifted to the plate of spaghetti on the table. She picked up a fork and started to eat, feeling a little sad. Janice called Debbie and the others together. From the moment the 5 girls set foot in Chicago, their hearts were pounding with excitement. They dreamed of becoming famous and earning lots of money, and now that they had arrived in Chicago for the talent show, they had officially taken the first step. Everyone seems to be doing really well, Janice stated. I hope you can all stay so positive until we have successfully competed in the talent show. She looked around at them. As you all know, The Sky's the Limit is currently the most popular talent show on TV and the internet. And their sponsor is Lee Dempsey. For this year's show, he has invited 4 celebrities to be the judges. Lee Dempsey was well known for being exceptionally rich. Although he wasn't as famous as some other businessmen, his wealth and achievements were impressive. The girls all understood what Janice was saying. This was their big chance to make their mark. Melissa, Katie, and Olivia had been quiet since they got off the plane. They were determined to do their best to show off in the talent show and to fight for victory. They all wore exquisite makeup. Even while they were rehearsing, a reporter might come and interview them, and they could still show off their skills. As she listened to Janice speak, Melissa lightly twirled a lock of hair around one finger. She was busy imagining doing an interview and deciding how she would attract the attention of the judges. Now that it's almost time, I'm ready to announce the leader of the band, and also the lead singer, Janice said. Melissa's attention was immediately drawn back to her, and the others also focused on Janice. The leader was an important role in the band. When interviewed, the leader would speak on behalf of everyone, which meant that they would be the most famous member of the band. The next most famous would be the main singer. Melissa had always wanted those 2 roles, and she was sure that she was the perfect candidate for both. But would Janice let her take both roles at the same time? After rehearsing together, you must have some idea of each other's abilities, Janice continued. Several people were involved in this decision, so I hope that you can all accept the results. For those who have not been chosen, it doesn't mean that you aren't talented, but simply that someone else is more suited to the position. If she just announced that I'm the leader, then the others would be disappointed, Melissa thought. So she's saying this to prepare them, so they aren't upset. Then they can focus on supporting me, and I won't have to worry about trying to make them feel better. I won't make you wait any longer, Janice said, clearing her throat. Our decision is that... What? Melissa thought, her smile frozen on her face. She didn't know how to react to what Janice had just said. Rita was the leader, and Debbie was the lead singer, which meant that Melissa was nothing. It wasn't fair. Janice, did you misspeak? Surely Melissa asked, looking at Rita and Debbie in disbelief. Janice sighed softly. She had known that Melissa would question the decision, which was why she had made the speech before making the announcement. "Melissa, listen to me," Janice said. "Rita is the oldest and calmest among you. Besides, she's been in leadership roles before, and she can easily adapt to different situations." "I understand that," Melissa interrupted. Her gaze locked on Debbie's face. "But why did you make Debbie the lead singer? In terms of singing skills and musical proficiency, I'm clearly better, so why her and not me?" "Melissa, what's your problem?" Janice asked, annoyed by her attitude. "Do you think that I'm being unfair? You think you should be the lead singer? Fine then, go sing by yourself, but you'll be completely on your own. On the day of the talent show, you can perform solo." "I'm sorry, I was wrong," Melissa quickly apologized. If she kicked up a fuss, then as the manager, Janice could kick her out of the band. Janice glared at Melissa. She had just said that the decision had been made for the sake of the entire team. Melissa hadn't taken her words to heart. "Your singing is very good," she said to Melissa, "but Debbie has a better voice, and her dancing is also a little better than yours. So we decided to let her be the lead singer." Since Janice was the one who had discovered each of the girls, she felt she had to encourage them. "Melissa, the lead singer, may be more famous, but as long as you work hard, each one of you can stand out. I hope you will remember that you are all part of the same band." "I understand," Melissa said, lowering her head. However, she still didn't accept the decision. "I'm glad you can admit when you're wrong," Janice said, smiling as she patted Melissa's shoulder. She said a few more words of encouragement to them all, and then she clamped her hands together. "Okay, I've said everything I needed to say, so get back to rehearsing. We don't have much time left." They all went back to practicing. Janice watched for a while and then left to take care of a few things. Later that night, Debbie and the others finished rehearsing and left the practice room. "Don't think that just because you've become the lead singer that you're anything special," Melissa said, walking past with Katie and Olivia. She shot a disdainful look at Debbie. "Once we're on stage, you can't be sure which of us the judges and audience members will love more." Debbie quietly looked at Melissa. Janice had made the decision, so why was Melissa blaming Debbie? "You little bitch," Melissa said, snarling at her. "Don't think that you can steal my limelight just because you're the lead singer. Next to me, you'll never be worth anything." She walked over to Debbie with her arms crossed and a sinister look in her eyes. Debbie only looked at her with a hurt expression. "Look at this little mouse. She's scared of me," Melissa said, smiling as she pushed Debbie away. Then she walked out of the building with Katie and Olivia. A bright yellow Porsche drew to a halt in front of Melissa. The car door opened, and Melissa's boyfriend, Charlie Mason, stepped out of the car. He was dressed in hip-hop attire, and he also liked the music. "Hey, you're here," Melissa said, walking over to him. "What's wrong, babe? Why do you look unhappy?" Charlie asked as he wrapped an arm around her. "It's that country bumpkin," Melissa huffed angrily. "Janice gave her the lead singer position, and you know I'm a much better singer than her. I'm guessing that the little bitch must have slept her way into the position. Why else would they have chosen her over me?" Episode 89. You Should Leave Him Now. "Babe, don't get angry," Charlie said, patting Melissa gently to comfort her. "It doesn't matter if that girl's the lead singer. She won't steal your limelight. I'll be there in the VIP section, right behind the judges." This year, The Sky's the Limit was being filmed in a mansion in Chicago. On the day of the recording, there would only be around 100 members of staff present, and only 2,000 carefully chosen audience members would be allowed inside. Very few people would be allowed to watch the show. Charlie was rich and powerful, and the seats behind the judges' table were in a great position. "Really?" Melissa asks happily. "That's great. How much did you have to spend?" "Not much," he said. "Just $50,000, and it's worth it to be able to chat with some of the celebrities. I'll record your performance for you." Charlie opened the car door and said, "Get in. Let's go home first. Katie, Olivia, it's fine if you don't want to go back to the hotel. You can stay at my place. There are plenty guest rooms." Debbie and Rita walked out of the building. Hey, little bitch, look at this, Melissa said, sneering at Debbie. My boyfriend came to Chicago with me, and he even has a big house right here in the city. Where's your loser boyfriend? Why isn't he here? Oh, I forgot. He doesn't even own a car. So how could he afford to come to Chicago? He's exactly the kind of person you deserve. Meanwhile, I'm going back to my mansion to sleep, and you'll be taking the bus back to Janice's hotel. Melissa got into Charlie's car with Katie and Olivia, and they drove away. Are you okay? Rita asked with concern. Debbie shook her head slightly. Rita, are you going back to the hotel? Debbie was feeling extremely lonely, and she really wanted Rita to keep her company. Before Rita could answer, a Mercedes-Benz stopped in front of them. A well-dressed man got out of the car and said to Rita, Are you ready to go? Debbie recognized the man as Rita's boyfriend, and her heart dropped. Wait a moment, Rita said to her boyfriend, and then she turned back to look at Debbie with a hint of worry in her eyes. Sorry, Debbie, I can't go back to the hotel with you. It's okay, Debbie said. Her smile was so forced that Rita felt sorry for her. She helplessly looked skyward. Debbie, I hope you don't mind me giving you some advice, Rita said, looking at her. I really think you should break up with Alex as soon as possible. It's obvious that he can't protect you. So why waste time on him? Rita looked at Debbie seriously. I know he helped you a lot at school and that you love him, but you have to understand that the real world is much more complicated than that. We're all going to be big stars in the future. So even if you don't let go of him now, will you still have time for him once you're famous? I doubt it. You'll be living in two completely different worlds. And since you're destined to be apart, then why not just let him go now? She had been wanting to say that for a long time, and she hoped that Debbie would understand. But Debbie's eyes grew wide, and then she lowered her head and laughed softly, looking slightly embarrassed. I know you're just looking out for me, she said, but I won't break up with Alex. Rita was speechless. She rolled her eyes and looked away in frustration. She had already made the situation clear to Debbie, so why was she being so stubborn? I really appreciate your concern, Debbie said, but I can't break up with Alex. You don't understand what's between us, and he isn't what you think he is. Debbie knew how rich and important Alex was. Even Sam Woodsworth had to listen to him, and Alex was much wealthier than Rita and the others could imagine. Fine, Rita said, a little angry. I won't waste my breath. But since you're willing to suffer with Alex, then you should just stick with him. Debbie was being far too stubborn, and Rita didn't want to argue anymore. She didn't even look at Debbie as she walked toward her boyfriend's car and got in. Rita, please don't be angry, Debbie said. I really want to thank you for looking out for me. If you want to thank me, then think about what I've said and leave him, Rita said through the car window, and then she told her boyfriend to drive away. Debbie was left standing alone. Her smile gradually faded, and a strong sense of loneliness hit her. She pulled up the collar of her coat and walked toward the bus stop. She sat on the bus heading to the hotel and looked out the window at the brightly lit city. After a while, she slowly shifted her gaze to inside the bus. She felt so alone, and when she saw the smiling faces of the other passengers, she couldn't bear it anymore. She leaned her head against the back of the seat and closed her eyes. The days passed in much the same way. 1 day passed, then 2 days. For 7 days, Debbie had worked hard in rehearsals during the day and then took a bus back to the hotel at night. She grew lonelier with each passing day, and the longing for Alex became stronger and stronger. She pictured Alex's face in her mind, but she couldn't smile like she had the last time she had seen him. Her face started to crumble, and her lips thinned. 2 tears slipped from her eyes, sliding down the side of her face and dripping onto the ground. She slowly opened her eyes, which glimmered with tears. Then she took out her cell phone, found Alex's number, and called him. Hey, Debbie, you finally found time to call me. Tell me, do you miss me? Alex's familiar voice came through the phone, causing warm tears to roll down her face again. Why aren't you saying anything? Alex asked, feeling a little worried. It's nothing, she said, controlling herself so that he wouldn't hear her cry. I'm just calling to tell you that we're starting the talent show tomorrow at 8 p.m. That's great, he said. I've missed you so much this last week. She listened to him speak and she wanted him to come and visit her. But before coming to Chicago, she hadn't thought much about it. And now she wasn't sure what to do. She wanted Alex to see her first performance on stage, but she didn't want Melissa and the others to mock her. You called to ask me to come and see you, didn't you? Alex asked, saying exactly what Debbie had most wanted to hear. No, I've been having a good time in Chicago all by myself, she said, smiling. She didn't know why, but when Alex had suggested she wanted him there, she wanted to deny it. She whispered, But if you want to come, then come. I'm sorry, Debbie, he said, but our class is going to the city park to identify plants, and I have to be there, so can't come to Chicago. Debbie was stunned. It's fine, she said. You do what you have to do, and I'll be fine by myself in Chicago. She ended the call and leaned her forehead against the window. She wasn't aware of anything around her as the bus continued to move through the streets. Back in New York, Alex smiled as he put down his phone. He had intentionally tricked Debbie, saying that he wouldn't go to Chicago to see her. He planned to surprise her, knowing she would be happy when he turned up unexpectedly. At 10 a.m. the next day, a large crowd gathered in front of the building in Chicago where the Sky's Limit would take place. The crowd consisted of mostly young men and women, and they were all there to chase after the stars. This year's judges were also famous singers, and there were many rich people in the audience. With so many handsome men and beautiful women around, how could the crowd not be excited? The talent show was due to begin at 6 p.m., and more people began to arrive. One by one, the important guests were allowed through the doors to sit in the audience. Luxury cars appeared one after another. Each contained famous wealthy people, who were all extremely attractive and almost as exciting as the celebrities. Oh, that's the son of one of the richest men in the world, someone said. And that's the president of a huge international company, someone else replied. That's one of the top models in the world. Hey, isn't that the son of one of those noble families in Europe? And that's definitely the daughter of a Hollywood actress. The crowd cheered and exclaimed over each of the arrivals. At 5 p.m., the 4 celebrity judges arrived in private cars and walked inside, waving to the crowd and sending them into a frenzy. The girls in the crowd jumped up and down, shouting at the names of their idols and hoping that they would be able to catch a glimpse of them. I love you, one girl screamed. Over here, another yelled. You're my favorite singer, a girl shouted. I got an autograph, one fan squealed. I'm so happy I could faint. The bus carrying Debbie and the other contestants slowly moved through the crowd and approached the building. Looking at the people on both sides of the road, Debbie hoped that she would have that many fans one day. Episode 90, Melissa's Dirty Trick. Alex combed his hair, tidied himself up, and walked out of the Green Island Garden District. He called a taxi and went straight to the airport, intending to give Debbie a surprise by showing up in Chicago. After buying the ticket, he waited for 20 minutes for his flight to be called, and then he received a call from Joe. Alex, I'm treating you to dinner tonight at 8 p.m. You have to be there, Joe said. He seemed very happy, but he didn't explain what was going on. Oh, I can't. I have something to do, Alex said. He was about to explain that he was going to Chicago to watch Debbie's talent show, but Joe didn't let him finish speaking. Susan and I are engaged, Joe announced. Really? Alex asked. And her parents agreed? That's great. He was happy for Joe. He looked at the ticket in his hand. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to stay. Okay, I'll definitely be there. Call the others and I'll see you later. Joe was like a brother to him, and this was wonderful news. It wouldn't be fair if Alex didn't celebrate with him. He would have to change his plans. He felt a little guilty about Debbie, but he had to be with Joe, and Debbie had told him to stay in New York. She probably won't mind, he thought. He had no idea how much he would come to regret this decision. At the talent show in Chicago, the mansion was brightly lit, making it look very elegant. The stage was beside an artificial lake, and the background was made from a large fashion poster with dozens of pretty girls. The colorful lights and the lakes and the trees made the place seem magical. The seats for the 4 judges were directly in front of the stage, and there were dozens of seats in the audience for the most important guests, while the other 2,000 spectators had to stand. In a corner of the seating area, Charlie and Melissa were whispering to each other. "Babe, I'll definitely record your performance," Charlie said. He had a camera hanging from a strap around his neck. "It's just a pity that you're not the lead singer. That country bumpkin has nothing on you. Janice must be blind." "It's fine. So what if she's the lead singer?" Melissa said. "Don't forget, as the lead singer, she'll be the one to take the blame if things go badly," she chuckled. "Why do you say that?" Charlie asked. "Have you thought of a way to deal with her?" He knew Melissa too well. Not only was she not complaining about Debbie, but she seemed to be very happy about the situation. She had to be up to something. Melissa glanced at him with a trace of mischief in her eyes. She lowered her head and took a brown bottle out of her pocket. She looked around vigilantly, hiding the bottle with her body, and then gently shook it in front of him. "What's that?" Charlie asked. Melissa smiled. She stood on her tiptoes and cupped his ear with her hand as she whispered to him. His expression grew more and more excited as she spoke. Then he asked hesitantly, "Isn't that a bit too cruel? And if you make a fool of her on stage, won't that affect you too?" "I don't care," she said stubbornly. "She stole my position as lead singer. And if I perform well, the judges might not care about her. Perhaps this is my chance to shine." She smirked. "Go and sit down. The show is about to start. Remember to make me look pretty when you record me," she said as she walked away. Debbie and the others were doing their final rehearsal under Janice's watchful gaze. When Melissa returned, Janice immediately called her over to rehearse with them. After half an hour of practice, Janice spoke to them, giving them some last-minute instructions. After that, she let them sit and relax to mentally prepare for their performance. There was a lot of performers backstage, and everyone was feeling quite nervous. "Debbie, here, have a drink," Melissa said, walking up to Debbie and handing her a bottle of mineral water. "No thanks," Debbie said. "If I drink, I might need the toilet when I'm on the stage." She was suspicious. Why would Melissa bring her a drink? She hadn't expected that. Could she possibly be doing it to get in Debbie's good books? "It's fine," Melissa said. "It's not that long until we're due on stage. I bought an extra bottle and everyone else already has water. So if you don't drink it, then it'll go to waste. So you may as well have it." She pushed the water into Debbie's hand, and she had no choice but to take it. "Drink up," Melissa said. "It's good for you. Here, I'll drink too." She smiled, touched her bottle of water to Debbie's, and then drank half of it. Debbie was too embarrassed to refuse. She took a sip of water from the bottle as Melissa watched with a gleam in her eyes. "Okay, we'll be going on stage shortly, so get ready," Melissa said, smiling mysteriously. "Don't let us down." She walked over to Katie and Olivia. Debbie frowned. Melissa's behavior was very strange, but she decided to forget about it. She needed to focus on the things she had to remember to do on stage. At 8 p.m., while Alex was celebrating Joe's engagement back in New York, the Sky's the Limit talent show began in Chicago. The 4 judges sang a song together, and then they returned to the judges' seats as everyone applauded. The host went up on stage to make a speech, and then the contestants began to perform. Group after group sang and danced, and the 2,000 spectators enjoyed every moment, completely engrossed in the show. They clapped and cheered, and some even had to wipe away tears. The performances were truly brilliant. The atmosphere was electric, but the 4 judges were all more serious. They viewed the contestants a little more harshly, pointing out the flaws and shortcomings of each group. As the time for Debbie and the others to go on stage drew closer and closer, Debbie became increasingly nervous. However, she was confident that she would be able to perform well. But then, she suddenly felt a slight pain in her stomach. She rubbed it lightly, thinking that she must have eaten something that disagreed with her. No doubt she would be fine in a moment. She tried to concentrate on what was happening on stage. The 4 judges were all involved in the music industry, so they knew what they were talking about. Their comments were funny as well as insightful, and the contestants hung on to every word. Meanwhile, the pain in Debbie's stomach became more severe, and she could no longer think about how to perform on stage. All her attention was focused on the pain. "You guys are up soon," Janice told them. "Once you go on stage, don't think about anything else. You're just as good as anyone else here." She walked to the middle of the group, giving them final instructions. As she was speaking, she noticed that Debbie's face was pale, and beads of sweat had appeared on her forehead. Melissa looked at her excitedly. The bottle of water she had given Debbie to drink earlier had contained a very high dose of a drug that she had bought online. A small dose would give someone an upset stomach, and she had given Debbie a much larger dose. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Rita asked in concern. She put her arm around Debbie's shoulder. "I'm fine," Debbie insisted. "Maybe something I ate doesn't agree with me. My stomach's a bit sore, but don't worry, I'll be okay." "A bit sore?" Rita asked, looking worriedly at her. "You're sweating." She looked at Janice and said, "I think Debbie needs to go to the hospital." "That's right, Janice," Melissa agreed. "Debbie seems to be in pain, so she needs to go and rest. Don't worry, I can take over Debbie's position." "Do you really think we can just make changes to the group now?" Janice asked, frowning. She glanced at Rita and Melissa. The rules of the talent show were very strict, and they couldn't make any alterations. Janice knew Debbie should rest, but it just wasn't possible. "Debbie, can you hold on?" she asked worriedly, squatting in front of her. "I'm fine," Debbie said. "I promise." She raised her head and forced a smile. She didn't want to let the others down, and she also didn't want to miss such a good opportunity. "Okay," Janice said, gently caressing Debbie's face. "It's fine. It's only a few minutes until you go on stage, so it'll be over soon. Once you get off the stage, I'll take you back to the hotel." At that moment, the host on the stage spoke again. "Judges, thank you for your wonderful comments. The next group is from New York, the city that never sleeps. 4 charming young women with their own unique personalities. Let's welcome them onto the stage. Put your hands together for Dream Chasers." Melissa and the others started to walk toward the stage. But when Debbie stood up, her stomach hurt even more violently. Every time she tried to straighten up, her stomach hurt twice as bad. "Are you sure you're okay?" Rita asked worriedly, holding Debbie up. Debbie smiled and slowly shook her head. She was in so much pain now that her lips twisted into a grimace. She forced herself to take a breath. The performance would last only for about 10 minutes, so she could endure the pain for that long. Rita wanted to say something, but there was nothing she could do. She took Debbie's hand, and they walked slowly toward the stage.
Thank you for listening to Crown TV. Please don't forget to subscribe, share and turn on the notification button.